Would you like to download your transactions into QuickBooks Online so that you can classify them and record them very easily? Would you like to set up your QuickBooks Online so that you can import transactions and manage your bank transactions much faster and much easier than you could possibly imagine? Well, then you need to watch this video, QuickBooks Online, Bank Feeds, and Importing Transactions. My name is Mark Smolin. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldwide QuickBooks. I personally guarantee you the clearest possible explanation for every topic that you could need to set up your QuickBooks Online so that you can download, import, classify, and record bank transactions. This video will help you import transactions so that you can avoid duplicates and other types of mistakes like errors and omissions. You'll be able to set up your QuickBooks Online bank feeds, connect to your bank, download the files, and import transaction list files as well. You'll be able to classify and categorize transactions from the review list in the banking section of your QuickBooks Online. And you'll even be able to create rules to save time. Using bank feeds download feature is the best practice for managing bank transactions. You can match and unmatch transactions so that you don't have any duplicates. And I'm going to show you how you can import transactions that are in the Q.B.O format or the CSV format from Excel. It works with all bank and credit card type of accounts. So if your company has several credit cards and several bank accounts, at least some of them will have the financial institution make available this feature for you. And I promise, by the time you get to the end of this video, you will have learned every import option there is available when importing any kind of data into QuickBooks Online. And if that's all not enough, I promise you I answer all questions immediately if you leave them in the comments section below. I promise I will do my best to help you because I appreciate all my viewers and I want you to learn well. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope to hear from you as you enjoy learning about bank feeds. Now you may well ask, why should I import the transactions from the bank instead of recording them myself? Well, you can do everything you learned in QuickBooks Online, but much faster if you import the transactions from the bank instead of recording them one by one. So why is that? Well, the reason is the bank is keeping the same records of the same transactions that you're keeping records of in your QuickBooks Online. So if the bank is responsible for keeping records of your account and you're responsible for keeping the same records of the same account, why not save time simply by downloading and importing the bank transactions into your QuickBooks Online? Why not just copy their records? Makes sense, right? Well, it turns out there are legitimate reasons why we can't simply copy the bank's records. First of all, we know that the bank does not know what expense category each check is. Only the person who wrote the check can know, is this for repair expense, delivery expense, supplies expense, and so on. The bank can't know what category of income each deposit is. The bank doesn't know if the money came from a customer that you did one type of service or another. The bank also doesn't know which customer or which vendor was involved in the transaction. They simply get a little text in a description field and they can't know the person. And most importantly, the main reason not to just blindly copy the bank's records into your QuickBooks Online is that the bank sometimes makes mistakes. So how can we take advantage of and capitalize on the fact that someone else is keeping records of our bank account in considering these 4 issues? Well, this is the way it's done. All of the transactions that will eventually show up on your statements that you get in the mail are listed in your online account. When they download or when they import as a file, they will first go into a separate section of QuickBooks Online called a review list. Now, once they're recorded in the review list, you, the user, must approve each one before they get recorded into your QuickBooks Online records. You have to be the one to classify the expenses. You have to be the one to tell QuickBooks Online which income account, expense account, customer, or vendor is associated with that transaction, because the bank can't know from the information it gets. Now, of course, because it's a computer and because some things will clearly be repetitive, you can automate some of those tasks, and right off the bat, right at the beginning, you're saving a huge amount of time and energy. You're also more likely to make things accurate. Once your bank transactions are properly managed in the review list, then the transactions can be recorded into your QuickBooks Online records in such a way that they actually change the balances and affect your financial reports. So, it's really a vital feature, and self-employed bookkeepers and the average self-employed business person really shouldn't do their QuickBooks Online without it. So I know you will enjoy the bank feeds and importing transactions course, and you will enjoy the rest of this video. But in order to maximize your learning, you should know that if you click in the description field, which is the text right below this video, there's a button in the bottom right corner called Show More. And if you're watching this video on YouTube and you click Show More in the description field, it will open up and show you the table of contents. And the table of contents here will help you learn, because each chapter has a time index right next to the chapter name. And you can just click on the time index of the chapter you want, and YouTube will jump the video right over to the section of this video that you need to see. And to really benefit and know that you're an expert in QuickBooks Online bank feeds, you should know that way down at the bottom, below the table of contents, is a set of links to all the files that you can use for self-paced practice and giving yourself a self-paced practical exam. All you have to do is look at the links that are clearly marked for you to click and download the materials for you to do the project and see how well you learned and remembered.
Chapter 3. Setting up bank feeds.
To set up bank feeds in QuickBooks Online, you barely have to do anything. All you have to do is click Banking from the left panel, type in the name of your bank if it's not already there on the list, double-click to choose it, put in your username and password, and then it will ask you to match the accounts that are online in your QuickBooks Online account to the accounts that are in your online banking. That's all you have to do, and it barely takes a minute. Watch. Here we are at the test video company here in the QuickBooks Online account. So again, from the left panel, click Banking, and if you first created your company, you'll see a list of financial institutions that you can double click on. If yours is not here, you can type it into the search bar. It just so happens that I will be using Chase Bank and PayPal as the example financial institutions to set up the bank feeds. I'm going to start with Chase. I'm going to double click, and then all the computer is asking me for is my Chase ID, which is Computapes, and then the password that I had set up before. Click the button to prove you're not a robot, And then, of course, images with road. I guess, you have to go past your bank security features. This has a road, this has a road, this has a road. I guess that counts as a road. So you got to click past these features and click verify. Please also check the new images. Okay, now we have to do it again. Here's a road. Here's a road. I guess that's a road. You just have to click past your bank security features, click verify. Street signs, boy, they really, really want you to be sure. Okay, wow, they really, really want to make sure that it's you and not a robot. So now that we got past that, boy, Chase has some very tough security. We log into Chase through our QuickBooks Online. Your bank might have different security features that you have to get through. In fact, they're even going to text me. Boy, they never really stop with the security features. And I guess we click, we come here. And of course, they have text me my temporary identification code. Let me take a look. And after typing in the code, we click, and we finally made it past all the crazy security that Chase makes us do. And now we get to match the accounts that are in your online banking to the accounts that are in your QuickBooks Online. Premium plus checking is going to be Chase Personal, and business checking will be Chase Business. And I think that's it for Chase, and I'll click Connect. Now after we click Connect, it should only take a few seconds really for all of the transactions going as far back as Chase will allow to be downloaded in to my QuickBooks Online account. Now it allows you to click this green button to review the transactions that have come in. Now, I suggest you do not click Let's Do It. I suggest you click this little text here, I'm a pro, skip this. If you click Let's Do It, you have to go through everything one at a time, and you can only see it one transaction at a time on your screen. But if you click I'm a pro, let's skip this, here you get right to the review list, and this is the list that you'll be working with. Where it says Chase Personal, these are all the transactions that I've downloaded. Actually, yeah, all the transactions that I've downloaded in the Chase Personal account. If you click here and you flip it to Chase Business, then all of the transactions that downloaded from the business bank account will show up here. Now, it's very easy to navigate this review list. But remember, these transactions are not yet in your QuickBooks records. You have to review them and then decide if you want to add, match, or exclude them. Add means you record it into your QuickBooks records and it actually affects your financial reports. Match means you're going to tell QuickBooks that this transaction has already been entered into QuickBooks manually, and it will therefore exclude it from the review list and from QuickBooks. Or you can click Exclude. Now remember, clicking Match and clicking Exclude do the same thing. All that happens is that it gets removed from the review list. But if you click Exclude, it puts it on a separate list, a list of items that were excluded, and that list will be permanent until you delete the items from the exclude list. So look, if we come here, we scroll up and down. So how do you make those choices for each of these transactions? Well, just click anywhere in the line. So we're doing this bank account and we're reviewing each of these transactions. Click anywhere in the line, and then the blue bar will open up under the transaction. That's where you have a choice of adding it, matching it to an existing transaction. Okay, if you click match, you would get a list of available matches here that you could match it to. And that video is coming soon, and we'll talk all about matching and unmatching transactions. if you choose to match, if you choose find a match. If you click transfer, it assumes that you're transferring the money to another bank or equity type of account, which does happen. So these are your three choices, and they're based on the text in this description field that comes from the bank. And if you don't want to work with this transaction, you click the X to close it out, and you can pick another one. Click here. The blue bar opens under the transaction where you have a choice to add it, find a match, which again, the available possible matches would show up here, and we'll talk about that in a future video, or transfer it to another bank account or bank or equity type of account. You can scroll all the way up and down to see all of the transactions that have been downloaded, and you have to go through these one by one. Remember, just because the bank recorded them, it doesn't mean it's correct.
Chapter 4. Adding transactions.
Right now, all the numbers in the Q.B.O account that I am using are 0. I have not recorded any transactions in the financial records. We've only downloaded a review list from the bank. If we come back here, we can see these are the transactions that we have to review from the Chase business account before we put them in to the financial records. Now, in order to prove to you that this is an empty account, I'm going to open my custom-made trial balance so you can see this report does not contain any data. This is a trial balance showing the results of all dates, all transactions, all dates, and there's nothing here because the file is completely empty. But after we record our first transaction, we will see the numbers show up here once in the debit column and once in the credit column. For example, let's add the July 11th $200 deposit as video income earned from Alan Arby. Well, if we earn $200 in video income, that means video income will show up in the trial balance for $200. And if it was recorded from the Chase business account, the Chase business account will also show up here for the first time as $200. We click banking. We go back to the review list. And this first transaction was the one I was talking about a moment ago. It's in QuickBooks as a quick pay from a customer, but the income is not categorized and the customer is not defined. But QuickBooks saved us time by pulling it from the bank so we don't have to record the whole thing ourselves. Click once on the line to open the blue bar below so that we can clarify. Now, the name of the account of the income that we earned in this case was, let's see, where are the income accounts? Here they are. And video weddings income. So that's what we earned, video weddings income. Now we'll choose the proper customer, in this case Alan Arby. So now we have the customer and we have the account it goes with, and now we're able to click add. Now once you click add, you can see it disappears from the top of the review list. It's gone. It's not in the review list anymore. Where is it? If you click the In QuickBooks section, you can see all of the transactions that have been added to QuickBooks from the review list. Now, in order to prove this has affected our financial records, I'm going to click Reports. I'm going to open the trial balance again. And you can see we now have $200 recorded in the Chase business account and $200 recorded as income from wedding videos. Let's try one more. Let's add the $45 that we spent from the account on July 5th as delivery expense from UPS. So we go back to the banking center, and you can see the top of the review list has this $45 transaction that's really delivery expense for UPS. Click once anywhere in the line to bring the blue bar. Click Add because we're adding the transaction. The account, as we mentioned, was an expense. In this case, it was delivery expense. And the vendor who gave us that delivery is UPS. So now that we've clarified the transaction and that those are the only two things we have to put, we click Add, and we know it's been added to our QuickBooks records. We could click the In QuickBooks section to see every transaction that has been added to QuickBooks from the review list, or we could click Reports, and when we take a look at our trial balance, we see now we have delivery expense $45, wedding video income $200, and the difference is recorded in the Chase business account. You could also go back to banking, go back to the In QuickBooks review list, and double click on the transaction to see what it would look like if you entered it manually, and you could add further details or edit this. For example, if we go In QuickBooks, this was added from the review list, but maybe we need to add more. Maybe to this one, maybe to the one on July 5th, we need to add which customer or job. That's something you can't add from the Bank Center. So we click on it, and now it looks like the regular expense window where you would normally record the transactions, and you could add, clarify, or change anything you want after it's added into QuickBooks.
Chapter 5. Matching Transactions.
Why do we match transactions in QuickBooks Online bank feeds? Well, we have to make sure we do not enter the same transaction twice. You already recorded a transaction yourself. That same transaction was recorded by the bank in the bank's records. It came into the review list when it cleared the bank. You should not accept it into QuickBooks because you already recorded it, and that would make a duplicate transaction. So what does matching a transaction do? It takes it off of the review list. And guess what? That's it. That's all it does. It's absolutely the same result as clicking Exclude when you want to exclude a transaction that's on your bank feed's review list. That will prevent double counting and duplicating the transaction in your records. A matched transaction goes on to the excluded list the same way as if you clicked Exclude. The Auto Match feature suggests a match when the money amounts are the same. Let's take a look. Here you can see that the check number 2 is given a suggestion to match with the UPS check for $30. If we scroll down, you can see that this expense on June 12th, computer is suggesting to match it with the May 25th expense that we recorded for Staples. Same thing with this Capital One for $30, and the same thing with this, or Con Edison anyway, and the same thing with this Staples for $100. Now, you can enter it into QuickBooks as is, or you can change it and then enter it. You can match it to a different transaction, but matching it to a different transaction will be the topic of another video. Let's do an example. Let's imagine the July 31 check, which is check number 2 for $30. Let's agree with the Auto Match's suggestion for the name UPS and the account delivery expense, and then we'll see if it's entered into QuickBooks. Here we are back in the Bank Feed Center, and here we are at the July 31 check number 2. And QuickBooks says this July 31 transaction for $30 cleared the bank on July 31, and QuickBooks suggests that that's really the July 15th check number 2 to UPS. All you have to do is click Match, and boom, it disappears from the review list and goes into your QuickBooks records. Look, here are the other July 31s, but not the matched one to UPS. Where is it? It's in QuickBooks. So if we click in QuickBooks, we should see here it is, July 31, $30, check number 2, and that's how you do it. Now let's add the June 12th matched transaction for $100. But before we add it and before we match it, we'll change the name to Office Max and the account to Equipment. So here's the June 12th transaction that QuickBooks suggested a match. Here it is, June 12th, $100. Okay, now we can't really see which account, or there's no field to change for the name or the account. You have to click anywhere in the row, and for that row the blue bar opens up. Now you see it's a suggested match, but you still don't know how to change the name or the account. So what do? Well, you can see the bank memo and all the other information if you click Add and change it to the Add button. So what do I mean? Right now it looks this way because it's a suggested match. But if you click Add, you have the ability to then see the bank memo, and you then have the ability to change the expense account as well as the vendor. So when I click here, I can make sure that it still says Staples, and I can make sure that the account is Equipment, which is what we purchased from Staples for the $100 on June 12th. Now that everything is the way that I need it to be, I can click Add. And now it's added. And now let's see if it's entered into QuickBooks. All you have to do is scroll up and click in QuickBooks, and you can see this June 12th for $100 has been added, and it affects the results of your reports.
Chapter 6. Fixing Matching Mistakes.
There are two common problems associated with QuickBooks Online matching transactions. The first common mistake is that people click Add and therefore agree with the auto-match suggestion when in fact they should have changed what was there. The second common problem is that you cannot match because the bank or the bookkeeper recorded the wrong money amount. Let's address the first problem. What if you match the wrong one? Well, the transaction is already in QuickBooks, so matching the wrong one won't affect your financial records. The only thing that happened is that the transaction wrongfully came off of the review list. You have to send it back to the review list so you can match it to the correct one. Or there are two ways to send it back to the review list. You can just click Undo, which I'm about to show you, or you can open the transaction and click Unmatch. So let's go back to QuickBooks Online. Here's the review list where the transactions that we just matched are no longer there. They're in QuickBooks. And when we click in QuickBooks, we get the two transactions that we just matched from the previous video. Now, one way to undo the match so that you could send it back to the review list and match it to the correct one is simply click in QuickBooks, come to the right, and click Undo. Now that July 31 for $30 is removed from QuickBooks and it's back in the review list. If I click for review, here it is, $30, July 31, and it again suggests the same match. Okay, what's the other option I spoke about a moment ago? Open the transaction and click Unmatch. That'll move it back to the review list while keeping the original transaction in QuickBooks, and then you can match it to the right one. So if we go back to in QuickBooks, there's only one left in QuickBooks because we removed the other one. Now you could click Undo, but you can only click Undo if you're finding the transaction here in the Bank Feed Center. What if you find the transaction in a report and you open it up and it looks like this, and you know that it should not be matched? You need to send it back to the review list without affecting the actual transaction that was recorded. So your other option is to go right here to the top left and click Online Banking Matches. This choice will be available if this is a matched transaction. And it gives you the details, and all you have to do is click Unmatch. Once you click Unmatch, you can go back to the review list and you can see it is no longer in QuickBooks. If you click for review, you can go down to June 12th and see that this suggested match has now been returned to the review list. Now let's address the second type of mistake that could happen when matching transactions in QuickBooks Online bank feeds. What if you cannot match because the bank or the bookkeeper recorded the wrong money amount? Well, here's what I recommend. I recommend that if it's your mistake, I suggest you edit the transaction before matching it or excluding it. Edit the normal way that you learned in previous videos. If it's the bank's mistake, show the bank the check or the deposit slip and have them fix it, then exclude it from the review list, because the result of matching is the same as excluding. It makes sure that you don't double count a transaction. What I do not recommend is that you click the button at the bottom that says Resolve Differences. In my opinion, that is a very bad feature and will only cause problems. This will create a new transaction for the difference in money amounts. That will make your records inaccurate, and it will make the bank reconciliation that you do at the end of the month more difficult. So let's take a look at how we would do it, even though I recommend against it. So let's imagine this $100 is matched to the wrong one with the auto match suggestion. You can click on it, and when you open it up, it will give you a list of every other possible match that you could match it to. So you could match it to the other June 12th, which is what it's suggesting, or you could match it to the other $100 transaction on May 25th. But if you open this blue bar, the only suggestions you get are the ones with the exact money amount. If you want to see suggestions with different money amounts, you have to click this button, Find Other Matching Transactions. And then you'll notice the ones with the same money amount plus some other possible matches would show up here. Now, just to show you how terrible this is, let's imagine we're going to match this $100 transaction that was that was recorded in QuickBooks with the $30 transaction that was downloaded from the bank. So if I want to match something with a different money amount, I click this one that I'm going to match this one, and it says there's a difference. Now again, I don't recommend you do this, but if you click Resolve Difference, what's going to happen is QuickBooks is going to add a new transaction, and the new transaction will be the difference in money amount. So in this case, it's going to add a $70 transaction just to adjust for the difference. Your books and records are now a total mess. Don't do it this way, even though that feature is included. If you notice the money amount is different, click on it and edit it and make it the correct money amount.
Chapter 7. Using Rules.
If you set up rules, you can save time and have QuickBooks Bank Feed Center input the vendor or the customer that's involved in that transaction automatically. In fact, the rules will even allow the Bank Feed Center to input the income, expense, or transfer account that's involved in that transaction automatically, so that it'll save you time as you go through the review list. The rules can be based on either the text in the bank text memo field or the description field. Now let me show you what the difference is. Here we are back at the Bank Feed Center, and this column says Description. QuickBooks takes a tiny piece of the bank memo and puts that as the description. But if you click on the transaction, it opens up with all the information about the transaction, and this long string of text here is what QuickBooks calls the bank text. So the little bit you see here is QuickBooks Online's interpretation of what this whole memo is. And you may well ask, what is this whole bank text here? That comes from the memo field in your bank account. Now I can show you I'm already logged into my Chase business account, the one that I'm using for this example, 3565. And if I scroll down to the July 31st ATM for $2.50, I can see that what Chase Bank calls the description is really the full memo field, non-Chase ATM fee with the capital letters, and that's July 31 for $2.50. This is the memo field with all of the text. So when I come back to QuickBooks Online and I go back to that July 31st, you know, the one for $2.50, that's this one over here, you can see the description only says ATM fee. But when I click on it, I get the full text here, which is the bank text, non-Chase ATM fee for the $2.50 on July 31, which is what this says for the $2.51. So exactly what's in the bank memo is what's copied into what QuickBooks calls the bank text. And this description is just an abbreviation. The rules can change what's in the review list or enter the transaction automatically after it makes the change. And you can make that choice when you set up the rule, and we'll do it both ways so you can see both results. For example, let's make a rule that every transaction that says ATM in the bank text, which is the large text field that comes from the memo in the bank, anyone that says ATM will automatically be categorized with the account owner's withdrawals. We can make it based on the bank text field, not the description field, as I mentioned a moment ago. And in this case, we will make the rule only for the account and not yet make a rule for the name of the customer or the vendor. So let's go here and let's make the rule. So we go to the top of the banking center and we click Bank Rules. And now on the top right, we click New Rule. Now when it comes to the name of the rule, I like to give the name of the rule as the same thing as the text that it's looking for, because that helps remind me what the rule is. You don't have to do it that way. This choice has to be correct. Is this rule going to affect the deposits or the expenses and checks? In this case, this is a rule for every transaction where money is coming out of the bank account. And what's nice about QuickBooks Online is that you can make the rule only for the bank account you're working for or for every bank account that you connected. In this case, we'll leave it for just the business checking. Okay, well, you have to click the check mark. Okay, so business checking. Now, when the transaction meets all of these conditions, so again, we don't want to use description. That's not enough text. We want to use bank text because that's the entire amount of the bank memo field. And again, ATM. So we're telling QuickBooks, anytime you see these three letters together in this way, in the bank text, which is the bank's memo field, what do you want it to do? Well, the type of transaction would be expense, not check, because ATM is not a check. We leave the payee blank for this rule because we're allowed. And the category will be owner's withdrawals. So basically this rule says anytime the memo from the bank has these letters put together in this way, please automatically put this account with it so we don't have to go through it ourselves and put the account ourselves. It'll take too much time. We will not yet click the check mark to automatically add it to the books. We just want to see what happens to the review list when we make and save this rule. We click Save. Now let's go back to the review list and see what happened. Notice this says ATM, and there's a green button here that says Rule, and it automatically suggested the owner's withdrawals account. This also has the word ATM, and it automatically suggested the owner's withdrawals account. Same thing with these three. Rule, ATM, owner's withdrawals. So we would save time. All you got to do is click add, 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 and you don't have to bother going through it and putting the withdrawals account yourself, because you know that's the proper account because it says ATM. Now, we could add it ourselves, but that would still take time. If we're really sure, we can go back and edit the rule to make it enter into QuickBooks automatically. That would really save us time. So, let's go back to bank rules, and this is the only rule, so we can click the check mark here and edit this rule. And the only edit we're going to make is this check mark down here. Please enter it automatically. Now that you know which account it is, please enter it without requiring that we have to click add next to each one. When I click save, we get a message that 6 transactions have been added to the books. And when we come back to the review list, you can see that it's down to 23 from 29 because those other 6 are no longer on the review list. Where are they? They're in QuickBooks. And we can see that they're in QuickBooks by clicking in QuickBooks. And when we click in QuickBooks, look at that, ATM, ATM, ATM. They have already been recorded in QuickBooks, and you can check that they have already been recorded into QuickBooks by looking at the rest of your QuickBooks reports. You can make a rule for deposits the same way you make a rule for expenses and checks. For example, let's make a rule that every transaction that has in its description field, which is the little field that comes from QuickBooks Online, let's make that have the exact words Quick Pay. So any one of the little fields that has the word Quick Pay spelled this way should automatically have Alan Arby as the customer and Video Income as the account. Now remember, we're basing it on the description field and not the memo that came from the bank. So here we go. Notice in the review list there are quite a number of Chase Quick Pay in this little field description. Again, we're not talking about this long text here. We're talking only about the little description that QuickBooks Online puts as an interpretation of the memo field. So we click Bank Rules, and again click New Rule in the top right. And again, I like to make the rule the same as the text. Let's not make it all caps. Okay, Quick Pay. I like to make the name of the rule the same as the text, but this time, okay, it's not for money coming out. This time it's for money coming in. And let's leave it with all bank accounts, or you could select the specific bank accounts that you want to apply this rule to. Now this rule I'm purposely making a little different. Instead of the bank text, we'll make it based on the description just to see that it works. You should also know there are other options for criteria. You could make it an exact spelling of something because you might have two rules that are very similar, or you could make it a rule for anything that doesn't contain a specific text. You could even make it based on the amount. You could tell QuickBooks, let's have a rule that anything of this exact amount has this specific name and this specific account. But for now, let's leave it as description, and you can explore and experiment with the different options on your own time. But when the bank text contains exactly this text spelled this way, it means that it's a deposit because it's for money coming in, and it means the payee should be Alan Arby. We want QuickBooks to put that automatically, and we want the income account to be Video Income. Okay, we don't yet want it to automatically put it in QuickBooks. We want to see what it looks like on the review list. So again, for all money coming in, if it has this, if the description contains this, and I suggest you explore and experiment with these options later, but if the description contains this, QuickBooks should put the name as Alan Arby and the account as Video Income. Now after we save this rule, we can come back to the bank review list, look at this. This said Chase Quick Pay. It suggests the rule video income, and it suggests Allen Arby. This also had the word Quick Pay in the description. It suggests video income, and it suggests Allen Arby, and so on. So there are several of these. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So out of the 23 transactions that are in review, 6 of them we could go through one by one and click Add. But it would be much faster if we went back to the bank rules, clicked Edit to edit that particular rule, and simply told QuickBooks, instead of just showing us on the review list, automatically add it into QuickBooks. As soon as we click Save, we're going to get this message. 6 transactions have been added to your books. And when we come back to the Bank Feed Center, you can see now there are only 17 on the review list from 23 a minute ago, because the other 6 have been added in QuickBooks. And we can confirm that they're in QuickBooks by clicking here, and now you can see all the ones that say Quick Pay have been added as a deposit with video income and Allen Arby. And that's how you use bank rules in the Bank Feed Center of QuickBooks Online.
Chapter 8. Importing Q.B.O. files.
Q.B.O. files are really the best kind of Web Connect files. Web Connect files can be directly imported into the Bank Feed Center for your QuickBooks Online. The good format is either the .qbo or .qfx file extension. They're both basically the same. And most banks make them available for free. There's no need to connect via bank feeds if you have access to these downloadable files. When you import, the result is exactly the same as downloading through bank feeds. In fact, excluded transactions that are deleted from the excluded list can be imported again. And that's a big difference between doing the bank feeds and importing the file. Now here I am logged in to my Chase bank account, and you can see I'm still very unsuccessful in business. But in Chase Bank, if you're logged into the account activity, you can go to the right and click See More Choices. And one of the choices is Download Account Activity. In order to know where this is in your bank, you would have to contact your financial institution and find out where to click. But with Chase Bank, we click here, we scroll down, and it says, you know, there's no charge for this. Click Continue. Then I select a date range. I select which bank account I want to download the activity, and I select a date range. I'm going to leave it as all transactions. And the most important choice down here is the file type. Chase is very good. These are all of the different file types that they make available for you to download your activity to. And in this case, we want Web Connect Q.B.O. I'm going to click Download Activity. And you can see it downloads here. I'm going to click Show in Folder so that I can copy it to my desktop. And I like to copy it to my desktop so when I import it into QuickBooks Online, paste. So that's JPMC with this logo with the number 3. It's the 3rd time I did it. And I like to put it on my desktop because now I'm going to come back to my QuickBooks Online. Now I'm going to go to the Banking Center. Now where it says Update, I will not click Update. I will instead click File Upload. Then it will give me a choice of what files to upload. If I click Browse, see, notice the the format choices that are available for upload for banking for QuickBooks Online. CSV will do in the following video. QFX and QBO are basically the same thing, and they're the better ones. Click Browse, and we want the JP Morgan Chase with number 3, which is the one I just downloaded. Click Open. Now once it's labeled here, I go to the right and I click Next. Now, we uploaded this particular account Now QuickBooks needs to know which account in QuickBooks Online to match this bank account with. When I click here, I get a choice of only the bank type of accounts. And I click the Try Checking account because that's the example that I'm using. Now I click Next, and I wait a moment, and you will see when we go back to the Bank Feed Center, all of these, or the Banking Center, all of the transactions that are in the file will be placed on the review list exactly as if I downloaded them through Bank Feeds. When it's ready, it gives you this green button in the bottom right, Let's Go. And now, when we go to the Banking Center and we look at the transactions that are downloaded, you can see here are all of the transactions that were downloaded into this particular bank account, the one we had chosen, Try Checking. Now, one thing I can show you that will prove to you that this is exactly the same thing as importing it through bank feeds is this. If I click in QuickBooks, you will notice that there are a whole bunch that are already in QuickBooks. If you remember the previous video, we set up a rule for the monthly service fee. That rule applied to every bank account. So when I imported this file, it applied to this bank account and automatically put in QuickBooks all of these transactions, the service fee, the quick pay, all of the rules that we set up, the ATM fee, all of the rules that we set up in the previous videos are still in effect. And at the moment I imported this file, all of these were automatically recorded into QuickBooks according to the rule. Now let's illustrate the difference between bank feeds and uploading the file. If you accidentally exclude a transaction and then delete it, you can bring it back by importing the file again. So let's exclude the newest one, July 5th, $45 to American Express. Now that's this top one over here, July 5th, $45 to American Express. I'm going to select it, then I'm going to click Batch Actions, Exclude. Now you can see it is no longer in the review list. If I click the Exclude list, you can see it's currently the only one on the Exclude list. Okay? Now, let's delete it from the Exclude list. Click here, Batch Actions, Delete. Yes. Now, if this were bank feeds, that would be gone forever. But because we have the Web Connect file in Q.B.O. format, we can just come up here, do not click Update, click the pull down, and click File Upload. And let's do the file upload exactly the way we did it before, exactly the same file, open it up, click Next, okay, choose the very same bank account, click Next, just wait a moment for it to import. Now when it's ready, it gives you the Let's Go button in the bottom right, and here we are. Aha! Look at that. The July 5th American Express $45 is back on the list. Now I'd like to leave you with one however. However, if you accept into QuickBooks as a transaction, it will not reload into the review list when you import it again. That's it. That's true even if you delete it from QuickBooks. So if you put it on the exclude list or you delete it, you can get it back. But if you put it into QuickBooks, you cannot get it back, not even if you re-import the file. And of course, you could try that experiment yourself, but I think you get the idea.
Chapter 9. Importing CSV Excel files.
Importing CSV files have a few important facts that you have to remember. Number one, they go on the review list for bank feeds the same as if you downloaded the transactions from bank feeds. After you input, everything is exactly the same as if you input through bank feeds. That means that the rules that you set up will apply. The suggested matches will come the exact same way. The only difference between importing a CSV file and a Q.B.O. file is that all the deposits are assigned to the suggested account uncategorized income, and all the payments and checks are assigned to the suggested account uncategorized expense. So what must you do? Well, first you have to download it the same way as you would download a Q.B.O. file. Now here I am logged into my Chase business bank account to see the activity, and as you can see, I am still unsuccessful in business. But if you have Chase, you can look to the right of your summary and click where it says See More Choices. Now, of course, if you do not have Chase, you will have to contact your own financial institution and find out where to click when you log into your online banking. But in this case, I do have Chase, so all I have to do is click Download Account Activity. And notice I come back to the same place that I was at in the previous video when I downloaded the Q.B.O. file. I can just click Continue and I'll come to a window that'll ask me, number one, which particular bank account I'm downloading. Number two, do I want to download all transactions or a specific date range? In this case, I'm going to leave it as all transactions. Now, the most important choice down here is Save Download Type. Now, in this video, we're learning about comma-separated values. And we click here. Now when we click Download Activity, you can see in the bottom left that I have downloaded this CSV file. Now if I open it up, you can see that the default program that opens it up is Microsoft Excel. And you will notice it really only has 4 columns, and I'm going to stretch them a little wider. If you're working with QuickBooks, it is assumed you have some basic knowledge of Excel. And you can see, even though this 5th column is here in column E, it really didn't put any information. It really only put type, and it only put debit and credit, so that's not really important. And of course, date, description, and amount are the only things that you're really getting if you download the file in this format. So what do we do next? Well, we have to import the file in the same place as we did with Q.B.O. files. If you remember the previous video, we were in the banking center and we had chosen the new checking account. Now, as you can see, the new checking account is empty. There's nothing for review, there's nothing in QuickBooks, and there's nothing excluded, at least not yet. So now we will import in the same place as the Q.B.O. files. Well, how did we do that? Well, when the account is in front of you, do not click Update. Click the pull-down arrow and choose File Upload. Then you get this window. Click Browse, and we'll find the J.P. Morgan Chase, the one that has the CSV extension. And now we'll click Open. Once the file is selected, go to the bottom right of the screen and click Next. Now, we have to choose which particular account in our QuickBooks Online account this file and these bank transactions will be imported to. In this case, when we click the pull-down menu, we get a choice of mostly bank type of accounts or even current assets. In this case, I'm going to choose the new checking account, which is the one we're working with, and click Next. Now, here we have to map the 3 columns, date, description, and amount. And map means that we match the columns in the file to the columns that Q.B.O. is asking for. Now here we are again in the here we are again in the file, and we can see this first column, column number 1 would be A, column number 2 would be B, column number 3 would be C, and so on. So when we look at the QuickBooks Online window, QuickBooks is suggesting that the date column is column number 2. And in this case, you can see the suggestion is correct. The post date, or the column with the heading post date, is the second column to the right. And that's why it says date column 2, post date. Now, description, QuickBooks suggests column 3 because the heading is description. 1, 2, 3. This is the third column over to the right, from the left. That's what the heading is, description. So QuickBooks is correct. We'll leave this choice. Description. Now, as far as amount, which column do you think it is? Column 4 has the heading amount, and we can look in the file and double check that that is the fourth column from, starting from the left. So now everything has been mapped appropriately. When we click next, we'll get a list of every transaction in the file, and this is our chance to remove the check mark and exclude any transactions that we don't want to be imported from this list. In our case, I think we'll leave all of these checked and we'll click next. Now, it's asking us if we're sure. We're going to click yes. And before you know it, all of these transactions will have been imported successfully into the QuickBooks Online account. When we click Let's Go, we find ourselves back here in the same window in the new checking account, but now you can see all of the transactions that were on that list a moment ago have been imported into the For Review section. Now, you must go through them and record transaction by transaction and clarify which is income, expense, or transfer. So if you look closely, you can see that all of these either say uncategorized income or uncategorized, maybe it says uncategorized asset, transfer to uncategorized asset. Now, again, sometimes it suggests accounts instead of just putting it, because that's the auto match just giving a suggestion. But no matter what, you have to go through it one by one before you add. Now, I want to show you that from this point forward, everything is the same as it was when we did bank feeds. In fact, if we click here, well, let me just scroll down a little. If we click right here in QuickBooks, notice there are a whole bunch that have just been recorded directly into QuickBooks. And if you watched our previous videos, you can see that these all come from the rules that we set up in the previous video when we were learning about rules. So all of these got recorded as transactions and are already affecting the financial records of the company, and that happened in the blink of an eye when it was imported. All the ones that don't match a rule are still here for review. And you would have to do the same thing that you did when you downloaded them directly from the bank. You have to click on it, and then you have to decide, do you want to add it or find a match? Or, instead of finding a match, is this a transfer from another account, and then you would choose the other account you're transferring it from. And you would have to go through that one by one and do that for any ones where there's no automatic rule. So in a way, it's exactly the same. Now, the only difference is something that is similar between CSV files and Q.B.O. files. The difference between importing a Web Connect file and downloading it from the bank, and this includes the CSV, if you accidentally exclude a transaction and then you delete it from the exclude list, you can bring it back by importing the file again. However, if you accept into QuickBooks as a transaction, it will not reload it into the review list when you import the file again. And that's true even if you delete the transaction from QuickBooks. So these three facts are the same as they were in the previous video when we imported Q.B.O. files. And if you're not sure that I'm right, you can experiment with each of these three conditions. But I wish you good luck in importing your files.
Chapter 10. Importing from Desktop.
Using the Export Company File to QuickBooks Online command, which is in the main menu of the QuickBooks desktop software, we're able to export all the information from your QuickBooks desktop file to your QuickBooks Online account. It transfers the data from the desktop version to the online version, and it's so easy. You just click from the main menu. Then after you do that, QuickBooks will ask you for your username and password for QuickBooks Online. After you put in the username and password, you will get a message asking you to wait for an email. After you get the email, you can log in to your QuickBooks Online and you can see everything that was in your QuickBooks desktop file is now in your QuickBooks Online account. Sounds great, right? However, there are some things you must be aware of. Everything in the QuickBooks Online account that was there before you uploaded your desktop information, everything that was there that was not in the desktop will be erased. The desktop will overwrite everything in the file, and that includes transactions, list items such as customers, vendors, and products. Memorized reports will not transfer from the desktop version to the online version, and if you made custom reports in QuickBooks Online, they're going to disappear after you do this procedure. In fact, all of the account settings and preferences that you set up in QuickBooks Online will also go back to the defaults, and any preferences that you might have had are not going to transfer. And since there is no icon bar, nothing from the icon bar will transfer because there is no icon bar. So read carefully number 4. Memorize transactions, memorized reports, anything in the icon bar and anything in the preferences will not transfer. It's almost like it'll be a brand new company overwritten with whatever happened to be in the QuickBooks file at the moment that you did the transfer. So here we are in the QuickBooks Online account for the very large corporation of America. Now, before we upload, I want to prove to you this file or this online account is empty. When I click Reports and I click Trial Balance, you will see nothing. Even if I include all dates and run the report, you will see this file has nothing. If I click Sales and go to the customer list, there are no customers. If I click Expenses and I go to the vendor list, there are no vendors. You get the point. Now watch. When I go back to my QuickBooks desktop account for the same company, the very large corporation of America, it's very simple. Click Company, and the very last choice is Export to Company File to QuickBooks Online. That's all you have to click. Then just wait a few seconds and QuickBooks will ask you your login information for that particular QuickBooks Online company account. Okay, so I'm going to use the email account that I created with this. Okay, and I'm going to see if it works, and log right in. Okay, now start fresh instead. See, they're warning you. Start by choosing which particular company you're importing to. Well, in my case, in your case, there'll only be one. This one, the one you just saw. Once you choose that company, you click Continue. Now, it could take up to 30 minutes, and what they do is they tell you, we're on it, we're transferring your data. When it's done, we'll send you a confirmation email. Now, the email comes pretty quickly. I'm very impressed. It usually comes a lot faster than a half hour. I'm going to click OK, got it. Now, I suspect that the email comes more quickly than we imagine. So I'm going to go over to my Gmail account. Oh, look at this, 1:13 p.m., which is the time that I'm doing this. So look at this. Don't reply. It's already available. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. See? So anyway, when I double click the email that I got, it says, congratulations, your stuff is online. Blah, 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 blah. Now, when we come back to the company and we click Dashboard, you see that we now have expenses and income. And if I click Reports, again, and I head over to the trial balance, You can see the trial balance now has results of transactions, but you may well ask, why would someone do this more than once? Well, you could use your desktop version of QuickBooks for the data entry, and you can upload daily so that you can see reports and access transactions from remote locations. So that's something to think about if you want to have both desktop and QuickBooks Online. And you really only need the online version so that you can see transactions from anywhere and you could read reports from anywhere. And then this way you have the benefit of both desktop features as well as online features.
Chapter 11. Importing without overwriting.
CSV files can add transactions without erasing others. They're really meant to be used for bank feeds in the bank feeds section. They're limited in how much information goes in each transaction. Use these tricks and tips to send as much information as possible in each transaction when transferring from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. Now, I assume you already watched the video on importing CSV files into QuickBooks Online. If not, you can pause this video, watch the other one, and then come back. Here are tricks and tips on how to send transactions from desktop to QuickBooks Online. Follow these steps exactly, and everything will work fine. First, export transactions from the transaction by account from your trial balance. Well, here we are in the QuickBooks Desktop version. Here's the trial balance, and let's imagine this is the bank account that we want to export from desktop and then import into QuickBooks Online. To get transaction by account, you should double-click the money amount, and you get this report, transaction by account, and it has a list of every transaction that has affected the balance of this particular bank account. Now, this is the only way to export it to Excel without leaving spaces. Other people might have other ideas, like use the advanced find or use the custom report feature, but none of them will get you all the transactions without leaving any spaces. Only by doing it from transaction by account will you have a spreadsheet with no spaces for the transaction list of your bank account. Now, before you export, you should customize the report to show only 3 columns: date, name, and amount. So let's do that. We go back to the transaction by account that you just double-clicked from the business checking, and we click Customize. Now let's remove every check mark except name, date, and amount. Remove this, scroll down, careful, scroll down very slowly. Leave date, but remove number and adjustment. Scroll down, leave name, remove memo, remove clear, remove split, remove everything but those 3. Now, when it comes to debit, credit, and amount, click to remove the debit, click to remove the credit, and click on amount, and you will see one number amount instead of the debit and credit column. Remove balance. Remove every other column except those 3. And then when you click OK, your report should look something like this. Now, export to Excel. OK, Excel, create new workbook. Click Export, and just wait a moment, and all this data on this report from this bank account, here we go, will be in Excel. Now, save the Excel file as CSV. That's the special format that allows you to import into QuickBooks Online. So we click File, Save As, Desktop, and I guess we could call it Buzz Checking, because that's the name of the bank account, business checking. Click Yes. Now, we didn't really save it as CSV. You got to be careful. File, Save As. Okay, same place, Buzz Checking, except we want
In order to save it as CSV, after you put the name, click the type and go up and find CSV, comma separated value. So there's a lot, here it is, comma delimited, this one, CSV. And if you save it in this format, QuickBooks will let you import it into QuickBooks Online. Click Save and then click OK. Now, change the date format on the top of the date format. Change the date format to the top date format. Now, what do I mean by the top date format? Well, if you right-click on the column heading, you can format the entire column. And when I say the top date format, I mean you come over to this section here in the home ribbon. You have this area called number. Click the corner and click date, so QuickBooks knows this is a date. Now, there are different formats of date, but you should choose the top one. Let's try it again. Date. Make sure the top format on the Excel list, 2 digits for the month, 2 digits for the day, and 4 digits for the year with a / in between, is the format, and that's what you choose. Format the other 2 columns as general type. Well, that's easy. Right-click on the column heading for name, and then come here and choose general. Okay. Right-click on the column heading for amount. Change the type to general. Make sure after the change you click the Save button so you don't lose your changes. Now, make sure there are no spaces or uneven rows or columns. Everything has to be smooth or it won't work. Well, what do I mean? Well, look, first of all, let's get rid of this row number 2, right-click, delete, so that everything is smooth. Scroll all the way down. If you scroll all the way down, you can see there's a little mess on the bottom. Believe it or not, just having this little mess on the bottom will cause an error message with the wrong error. Take it from someone who has experience. I couldn't believe this was the reason, but you should delete it. In fact, you should clear everything, including the formatting, and then again save the file after the changes. So now everything is nice and smooth, otherwise it won't work. Now, step number 8. Make your column headings exactly this: post date, description, and amount. You have to spell it exactly like this with a space in between and the proper capitalization, which means the capital letter beginning every word. Post date, description, and amount. So first, let's clear everything to make sure it's gone. Then we click here, capital P, post date, description, one letter wrong and the whole thing won't work. Description with a capital D, and then amount with a capital A. And then, of course, save the changes. Now your file is ready to import, and now this is what you do when you're in QuickBooks Online. Match the date and amount to the columns in the Excel QuickBooks Online file. Well, we learned from the previous video to import a CSV file. We click Banking. When you're in your QuickBooks Online account, by the way, you click Banking. Do not click the Update button. You will be a prisoner for several minutes. Click the pull-down arrow and click File Upload, and you get this window, just like we did in the video when we learned how to import CSV files. Click Browse, and I think it was called Business Checking, yes, but Business Checking CSV. Click Open. Now in the bottom right, click Next. And now we have to choose which account in our online QuickBooks account is the business checking account that we are importing the information into. Let's choose business checking. Click Next. Now, QuickBooks suggests that column 3 is the date and suggests that this is the format. And in this case, it's correct. Now, the column for description is really column 5, okay? Even though we know column 5 is the name, we're telling QuickBooks that column 5 is the description. Well, why are we doing that? We're doing that so that QuickBooks will look at the description column and see the name and execute the rule. And of course, the amount is column 7, the amount field. And then click Next. Now, here are all the transactions that we're about to import into QuickBooks Online, going into QuickBooks Online, and these are the money amounts, and they're going into the bank feed center. Now, they will not immediately affect your QuickBooks financial records except for the ones that follow the rules. So I have already set up rules. If the description column has Mark, it should have a certain income account. If it has Chase, it should have a certain expense account. If it has UPS, and so on. So by setting up the rules, it's the reason. Okay, well, anyway, let's just click Next. Click Yes. Now you'll see the import is complete. Now what does that mean? It means that some of these that did not match a rule are here for your review, and you can review them and add them in a batch or add them one by one. But some of them are all already recorded into QuickBooks. And these 3 that are already recorded into QuickBooks are recorded there because this is executing a rule. So if you set up rules to look at the description field, and then you use the name as the description field, QuickBooks will see the name, and it will automatically put what you want as the name and as the account because it's executing the rules that you set up before. And that's how you do it.
Chapter 12. Applying transactions to invoices and bills.
QuickBooks Bank Feeds is so great, you can actually apply the downloaded deposits to customers' invoices and the downloaded checks and expenses to vendors' bills. Downloaded deposits can be applied to customer and job invoices, and download checks and expenses can be applied to any vendor unpaid bill. It does not matter if the downloaded check or deposit was recorded before or after the bill or the invoice. With the new interface in the QuickBooks Online Bank Feeds, it's very simple to record and apply. And we will do 4 examples. We will do 2 examples of deposits applied to invoice, one before the invoice is recorded and one after. Then we'll do 2 examples of downloaded checks, one applied to the bill before the bill was recorded and one after. This proves that they're basically the same, and it does not matter the order that they were downloaded. So what are the steps for applying downloaded deposits to open invoices? Well, first, when you record it from the Bank Feed Center, the account category that you choose is Accounts Receivable. Then you put the customer's name in the Payee field, which is really the name field. QuickBooks will generate a credit for that customer or job that you will be able to see in the customer reports. And then you leave the Bank Feeds window and go to the Receive Payments window to apply that recorded deposit that you just recorded from Bank Feeds to any open invoice. First example, we will apply a downloaded deposit to an existing invoice. Greta Garbage has 2 open invoices for $100 each. We will apply the deposit from April 8th for $150 to all of the oldest invoice and some of the second for Greta Garbage. Now, remember, these are the steps, and this is what we'll do. And the date was April 8th for $150. Okay, so we go to banking, we go to the Bank Feed Center, and we scroll to the April 8th, this one's open, let's close it. We scroll to the April 8th transaction, which is right here.
April 8th. Click the check mark. Now, we have to choose the right account. The proper account category, if it's being applied to a customer's invoice, is accounts receivable. So scroll carefully until you find accounts receivable and click on it. Now, the customer is Greta Garbage. So we are now applying this 150 to her balance. And if we click Add, we can then click Reports, Custom Reports, Transaction List by Customer, and we go down to Greta Garbage, and we can see that she has 2 open invoices that no payments have been applied to, and she has this deposit. I have to scroll to the right for you to see the money amounts. But these are the 2 open invoices, and this was the deposit that we just recorded. Now, the last step requires that we go to the Receive Payments window to apply the deposit to the invoices. So we click New, Receive Payment. Of course, we choose Greta Garbage. And when we choose her, we see the 2 invoices on top and whatever credits she might have on the bottom. Now notice QuickBooks automatically applied this deposit to these invoices. But we learned in other courses that you can apply them how you want by removing the check marks and putting the proper money amounts in. Basically, it's right. $150 is paying off all of the first invoice and some of the second invoice. You could switch it. You could remove the check marks, and you could apply $50 to the newer one and apply $100 to the other one, but the total must equal the deposit that you're using down here, or the transaction won't record. Click Save and Close, and now you can check the Open Invoice Report. Reports, Open Invoice, and when you go to Greta Garbage, she only has 1 remaining open invoice in the amount of $50. Now, in our second example, it will be very similar, except the transactions will be in the opposite order. We record the deposit as a credit to the customer's account and make the invoice after. The deposit from Candy Charles on March 21 is a down payment from customer Candy Charles in the amount of $2,400, and it is for a future carpentry job. So it's the exact same thing in a different order, and we'll remember first we put in the accounts receivable account, we put in the customer's name, and we generate a credit. Then after that, we make the invoice and go to the Receive Payments window. But right now, let's back up a little. We want to record the $2,400 on March 21 as a credit to Candy, and then we're going to make the invoice after. No problem. We go to the banking section here, and we go to March 21. It's in date order, thank God. Here it is. Now, we want to make sure that we handle this properly, so we click here, and instead of uncategorized income, again we learned if it's going to be applied to a future invoice or even a past invoice, we choose accounts receivable as the account category. And of course, we have to choose the right customer, Candy Charles. And that's all we have to do in this window. And then, of course, we click Add. And we'll double check that this created a credit for Candy. Reports, Transaction List by Customer, and then you see Candy Charles. Candy Charles has just this deposit that's money paid in advance for the 2 invoices. Now, what we will do after, you see, we did these 3 steps, and now in this same example, we'll imagine on April 10th, we did $5,000 of carpentry for Candy, and we'll apply the $2,400. So we click New, Invoice, and we choose the customer that paid us in advance. And then the date was whatever the date was in this example, April 10. And we did carpentry. But most importantly, the money amount in our example is the most important piece of data, $5,000 for Candy. Now we click Save and Close. And now when we go back to the customer report, transaction list by customer, you can see that these still are two separate transactions for Candy Charles. There's a deposit and then there's an invoice. Now this payment gets generated automatically. It's created by QuickBooks Online to automatically apply payments to deposits. And we double click and we can see it actually did step 4 for us. The only thing we have to be careful of is if we don't agree how QuickBooks applied the customer's payments. In other words, if Candy had 5 invoices and the money amount from the deposit didn't cover it, then if QuickBooks applied it to the wrong invoice, we would remove the check mark and place it again on the ones that we wanted and type in the money amounts just like we did in the basic introductory course. But when we save this and we click yes, something's not quite right here. You can't apply more than the payments that you put the check mark on. So you might have several credits, but only one check mark is on 2,400, so the most you can apply in the top part is 2,400. And when you save and close, and you go back to the Open Invoice Report, Reports, Open Invoice, because that's the one that shows how the payments and the invoices were applied, you see that what remains for Candy is the difference between the $5,000 invoice and the $2,400 deposit that was downloaded, because we applied them together in the Receive Payments window. And just like QuickBooks can handle prepayments from customers for income, it can handle advance payments to vendors for future bills that we will receive. The steps are exactly the same except with the vendor-related words. When you record the check or the expense from the Bank Feed Center into your records, you will choose the Accounts Payable account as the account category. Then put the vendor's name in the Payee field, and then QuickBooks will generate a credit for that vendor that we can check on the vendor reports. Then use the Repay Bills, that's a little typo, it's the Pay Bills window, to apply the payments. It's not repay bills, it's just pay bills. Watch. In our third example, we apply downloaded checks to an existing bill. Peter Perfect is a vendor that we have 2 unpaid bills with. We will apply the checks from March 23rd, 2017. Okay, March 23rd, 2017, and these are the steps. So, very simple. We go to the Banking Center, and we go down to March 23rd. This is it right here. Boom. This March 23rd is going to be applied to the thing. Don't worry that it says Betty. We're going to fix that. Click here, and of course, the category must be Accounts Payable. Accounts Payable. And the vendor is Peter Perfect. And the amount is already set up here, the amount that's downloaded and the date, and click Add. And now when we click Reports and we click Transaction List by Vendor, you can see that Peter Perfect has 2 unpaid bills and an a payment which it decreases what we owe. So we owe for the bills and we owe a little less for this payment. The best report really is the unpaid bills report in the standard area. If you go who you owe, unpaid bill. Now save customization so that it stays in the custom area. But look at Peter Perfect. His balance is 1,100 because he has 2 invoices and 1 payment, but they have not yet been applied together. So what do? We do step 4. We do step 4. We use the pay bills window. No problem. New, and we go to vendors, pay bills. The pay bills window looks very similar to the receive payment window, except the credits are not as apparent. In the pay bills window, in order to see the credits available, you have to click the check mark, and QuickBooks will suggest and reveal the credit available. So if we apply the whole $1,400 to this $1,500 outstanding bill, it means this $1,000 will still be here, but the first bill will only be open by a $100 amount. And we're not paying $100, we're just applying a credit. So make the payment amount 0 and the credit applied $1,400. The pay bills window is not exactly as smooth as the receive payments window. In order to see the credits for vendors, you have to click a check mark first. So don't worry, we can now click Save and Close. And now when we go back to Reports, Custom, Unpaid Bills, you see that for Peter Perfect, the first bill was $1,500, now it's down to $100, and you can see the second bill is untouched. Now, in our fourth example, we're going to record the downloaded payment before we actually get the service and enter the bill. So let's imagine that the May 2nd, $1,200, that was a payment that was downloaded, goes to Penelope Pitstop, and it is in advance of the bills that we will receive. And we will record the payment first from the review list. Okay, so let's record this from the review list May 2nd. So we click Banking, and we go down to the May 2nd, and here we find the May 2nd $1,200. Click on the account category, and it'll open it up and let you change it. And now we want to choose the proper vendor, Penelope Pitstop, and we want to choose the right account. And of course, we now know the right account for payments for bills is accounts payable. Now, all we have to do is click Add. And when we click Reports, Unpaid Bills, we can see Penelope Pitstop has a prepayment. She paid in advance. That's why the number is negative on the Unpaid Bills report. Now, we receive bill number 98765 from Penelope for equipment rental expense, and we did that. We got that bill on June 12th of 2022 in the amount of $3,000. So let's enter the bill and then apply the payment that we just recorded from the bank feeds. We click New, Vendor Bill. The date we said was June 12th. It was a bill from Penelope Pitstop in the category of equipment rental. Equipment rental expense. Don't worry about the pop-ups. And the bill number was 98765, and the amount was $3,000. So now we click Save and Close. And when we look at the unpaid bill report, we see both things in Penelope Pitstop's section of the unpaid bills. But there should only be one. They have to be netted together. And the way to net them together is to click New, Vendor, Pay Bills, and when we choose Penelope Pitstop, right here. We click here and we get her category. Oh, excuse me. New, pay bills. See, these are all the unpaid bills that we could pay, but we want to just pay Penelope Pitstop. So we're going to click here, and then notice the credits appear. The only way to know the credit is to click and see what credit is available. And QuickBooks also assumes we're paying the rest of the bill, so since we're not, since we're only applying the credit, make the payment column become 0. Now, save and close, and the unpaid bill report shows that this bill that was originally $3,000 now only has an unpaid bill amount of $1,800. And that's how you apply bank feeds to invoices and bills.
Chapter 13. The Final Self-Checking Project.
This project is as easy as 1, 2, 3. All you have to do is download the files, follow the instructions, and when you finish, compare your results to mine. Now you may well ask, where are the files to download?
The links to the files are in the description field right below this video. If you click the Show More button, you'll expand the description field, and if you look way down below the table of contents, you will see the links to the files that you need for this project. Click on them, download them, and open them, and follow their instruction.
Now, there are important setup points that I need to cover before you start. First, the instructions require that you create a new blank QuickBooks Online account to be able to import the files and do the project. I have added 2 videos that show how to get a free QuickBooks Online Plus account or an Accountant's Edition account, and I added them to the beginning of this course so that you have choices on how to sign up for free to be able to practice what you learned in the course. If you import or upload the files to the new account, as I will demonstrate here, you'll be all set up and you'll be able to participate in the project. Sometimes there are technical issues when importing files. You must make sure all the details are the same. And sometimes regarding the technical issues, I wish I could help my students, but I cannot. I did test them before uploading, and they do work for most people. However, if you get an error message, please contact your tech support people or Google search for QuickBooks Online support. I can only help you with the QuickBooks knowledge. Unfortunately, I can't help my students if there's any kind of technical issue importing the file. And I will now demonstrate how to import the list items into QuickBooks Online so you can set up your project and be able to follow the steps. Now, the files I have provided are all in the proper format for importing list items to QuickBooks Online. The files must be in .csv, delimitated file format. You can just use Excel to open or make your own .csv, delimitated file. Each field or cell and column in the file must be formatted as, quote, general format, not number, not text, general format, and then the importing that I'm about to demonstrate will work. And then as you upload, you map to the data fields each column in the file, and it will work perfectly. Now here we are in QuickBooks Online, and to get the chart of accounts, we click Accounting, Chart of Accounts. You can see it already comes with accounts, but we need to upload the specific accounts that we will be using for this project. Do not click the word New. Click the pull-down arrow next to the word New and then click Import. You then get this window that allows you to choose the proper file to upload. We then click the Browse button, and notice I already have a folder called Online Import Test with all the related files. And the file that has the Q.B.O accounts to import is labeled Q.B.O accounts to import. I double click, and you can see the window has attached the correct file, and then I go to the bottom right and click Next. Now, this window is asking you to match the 3 required data fields to the fields that are in your file. So I have in my file a column heading named Account Name that QuickBooks has identified as the proper name. And I have in my file a field called Detail Type and Type. Let's take a quick look at the Excel file. If you double-click to open the file, you will see that the very top row is the label of each column, and QuickBooks knows this. It then knows that the column named Name is the name of the account, the column for Type is the type of the account, and the Detail Type is the detail type. So everything is labeled for QuickBooks to recognize. So I will not use this. Oops, excuse me. I'm just going to close it out. And now that's why QuickBooks Online was able to line up the columns this way. But if they were not correct, you would have to click the pull down and remap them to the correct column. We then click Next, and you can see QuickBooks has properly identified each row as the name, type, and detail type of each of the accounts that we need to import. We then click Import, and the last part of the setup is uploading the vendor list the same way that we uploaded the chart of accounts. We could include many fields of data for each vendor to upload, like the address and the email and the website and so on. But only the name field is mandatory. So in a real situation, you would have all these other fields that you would map just the way I mapped the chart of accounts a moment ago. But this file that you're uploading now only has the vendor name because that's all we really need for this project. So we click Expenses, Vendors. Now, do not click New Vendor. Click the arrow next to New Vendor and choose Import Vendors. Now you get the same screen to be able to search your computer for the file that has the vendor list. You click Browse, and here it is, Import Vendors. Click Open, and then click, as soon as you confirm that this is the file that QuickBooks Online is going to upload, you click Next, and notice only the name field is checked off, and that's fine. Normally, you would map all these other fields to different columns in the spreadsheet, but we only need the vendor name to put the vendor on the list to use the vendor for this project. So we click Next, and we agree with all the names of all the vendors, and then we click Import. Now, to confirm that it was imported, just scroll down and you'll see a list of names of all the vendors that you just uploaded. The instructions are in the Excel sheet named Online Bank Feeds Project Instructions. And when you finish, compare your results to mine. Good luck and enjoy your project. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this very special video. I know that everything you learned here will help you. And please contact me if there's anything else you need by leaving a comment in the comment section below this video. I hope you will remember to click like and subscribe, and please stay in touch.